There's been a big push lately towards creating authentic 8-bit games on modern consoles. From Shovel Knight to Rock Boshers to Always Awakening, I'm constantly amazed by the amount of high-quality side-scrollers coming from indie developers. Nogalious is the newest example of this trend, though it's a bit different. While other throwback titles generally attempt to be accessible to at least most players, this game makes no such effort. This is a punishing and often frustrating start to what is supposed to be a 3-part series. This is the story of a father who is caught up in a battle against the dark side when his daughter Marriott is kidnapped by the evil Dorama. This sets him off on an adventure through 5 lengthy worlds filled with ghouls, ghosts, and all kinds of other monsters. You'll also run into a number of tough bosses and a handful of puzzles. The result is a fairly straightforward action game that looks and plays just like a 30-year-old Nintendo Entertainment System game. Now each world is split up into a bunch of mostly single-screen areas where the goal is to find a key to move on. This will be complicated by the enemies, spikes, moving platforms, and every other 8-bit cliche you can think of. Once you've gathered up the key, you'll move on to the next stage, where you'll do the same thing all over again. Now, for what it's worth, not every screen is about collecting keys, but there's usually something you'll need to do in order to trigger the exit. Nogalious is the kind of game that expects you to replay the stages over and over until you've memorized the correct path and strategy. The word I'd use to describe the game is cheap, because the first-time developer definitely took pleasure in making it a little too easy to accidentally die. You can't just run into the next area, because chances are you're gonna smack into an enemy or fall into the water. Of course, it's only really tough until you've memorized the inconveniently placed enemies and tricked to each of the puzzles. The game is surprisingly short and simple when you know where everything is, but getting to that point will take hours of trial and error gameplay. That's more frustrating than fun. Now, one of the things I like about Nogalious is how you'll be able to pick up various weapons and power-ups throughout the 5 worlds and exploit them to find hidden areas and solve puzzles. What I don't like is how the power-ups will disappear when you die. It's all too common to get to the point where you'll need to use the power, then die, and then have to backtrack all the way to where you got that power to begin with. This is only made worse by the checkpointing, which always starts you in the room where you died. Either we need to keep the required power up, or we need to start back where we got it, because the way it is now, it just leads to a lot of needless backtracking. The other problem is that Nogalious remains a bit buggy. Okay, a lot buggy. It's not just the occasionally inconsistent frame rate, but how the stages don't always act the way they're supposed to. A good example of this is the bit where you're supposed to jump from vine to vine while the birds cut them in half. In theory, the vines are supposed to grow back, allowing you to get to the other side. But there are times when the birds are so aggressive that the vines never return. You're just stuck there. You can also get stuck inside the walls and platforms, making it literally impossible to move. This happened about a half-dozen times, and the result is always to restart the game from the very beginning. That sucks. All this is a real shame, since I like almost everything else about the package. I'm a fan of the authentic graphics, the enemy designs, the hidden areas, and the Castlevania cliches. I also dig the bosses, though they can be a bit cheap at times. The graphics and music are all spot on, it's just the gameplay, difficulty, and polish that miss the mark. Nogalious is a throwback game for those looking for a true old-school challenge. This is a tough game that demands you to play it over and over until you've memorized the right path and solutions. It's cheap and not always fair, 2 things that are made worse by the inconsistent performance and rampant bugs. This is an ominous start to what sounds like an ambitious trilogy. Hey, thanks for watching our review. So here's the question of the day. What's the best name for a hero character? This guy's name is Nogalious, which I'm not sure strikes the amount of fear the developers were going for. What are some of your favorite names for hero characters? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, I'm currently hard at work on a bunch of reviews, so look for my take on Tiny Hand's Adventure on Friday. I'm also going to be talking about a professional milestone, but I don't want to give too much away about that just yet. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.